I thought it was the perfect book. And I can't take credit for that phrasing because I heard somebody like on TikTok describe it that way. And then, of course, when I heard it, I kind of was like, oh, what do you mean a perfect book? Then I read it and I thought, you know what? I would call it perfect. Like in terms of what it's setting out to do, I feel like it does it perfectly. All right, welcome to another episode of Bookish, a casual book club. I'm Laura, and I'm here with my colleagues and friends, Sylvia and Kofi. Today, we're going to be discussing Claire Keegan's very short novel or novella called Small Things Like These. This was one of the first books I read in 2025. When I'm in a reading funk, I need to grab a very short book that I can finish and then feel good about myself. Like, oh, I read a whole book. This book is only 118 pages and the book size is very small, so very, very short. Along with that, I did read her other very popular book called Foster. And so Claire Keegan is an Irish writer, and she has come to Columbia several years ago to read at Howard County Poetry and Literature Society's Irish Evening. And at that time, she had a collection of short stories, I believe, called Antarctica that was out. So when I read this book in January, I realized now I'm overselling it, but I'm going to stick to it. I thought it was the perfect book. And I can't take credit for that phrasing because I heard somebody on TikTok describe it that way. And then, of course, when I heard it, I kind of was like, oh, what do you mean a perfect book? Then I read it and I thought, you know what? I would call it perfect. In terms of what it's setting out to do, I feel like it does it perfectly. And I should have started with a short synopsis. It follows our main character, whose name is
Bill Furlong.
That's right, Bill Furlong. And we follow him through Christmas time. And it just, spoiler alert, I won't give away the ending, I guess. But actually, I feel like we will end up having to talk about the ending. But
we can talk about without talking about
it. Sure. It's about him and his family in a small town in Ireland, and it's around Christmas time, and he goes to make a delivery at a convent and comes across a young woman who's in distress, and it seems that he leaves her there in the convent, and he keeps thinking about her, and we have sort of this moment of needing to make a choice, I think, about what he's going to do or not do. And I remember when I was reading it, a little bit holding my breath, what is he going to do? Is he actually going to do it or not do it? And so on. And he did what I wanted him to do. And maybe that's why I felt closed the book and I felt good. That's really good. And it was perfect in my mind. But I have a feeling Kofi's going to disagree with me.
You have a good feeling.
Okay, so you go.
No, I didn't. I actually, to be quite honest, I thought about this book in relationship to our last pod, in that
Me too.
This book seemed much more hopeful, and that the ending is one of hope. And I found it to be and I think we had one of our pods was about, not necessarily hopeful books, but basically hopeful books. And we had a hard time finding them.
Joyful.
Yeah,
joyful, delightful, whatever.
Yeah, and there was a kind of delight in this book, even though the young lady in question, I think her name is Sarah, was in I guess in a bad way. I felt like there was a level of just quiet delight, and maybe because it was set in the Christmas time and that there was a level of hopefulness. But it also was clear that he was trying to salvage something that was missing from his life, and that relationship with whoever his father was. And I think that was a significant movement in the story. Is it a perfect story or a perfect book? I don't know about that. I don't know if I would go out. Although I think someone said, they called it powerful, stunning, just stunning. And I too would like my book jacket to say things like that about my writing, even if I don't think that way myself. Mm-hmm. I really felt like it was a really good paced book. I liked how certain chapters were contained without sort of the bleeding into the next chapter until you get towards the end.
There was like a complete thought in a chapter.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think in those sort of writer ways, I really appreciated the book and I really liked it. But I kept thinking like, what is Laura and Sylvia going to say?
Interesting.
Because this is not like some of the books we've read.
Yeah,
it really is not.
No, it's not like some of the books we've read. It's definitely not like The Vegetarian. It's not like James, and it's not like it's just not like it. The way it ends, it's not like The Parade. You're sort of, at least I was sort of left with this hopefulness.
Yes.
Although Eileen we don't know how Eileen and the rest of the girls are going to respond. But one of the things I felt was like, this is a very hopeful book. And I was, and maybe that created some delight in me.
I want to hear what Sylvia has to say, but I just want to say about Eileen. Mm-hmm. The second time going over the book again, I caught her line where she invites Ned to Christmas dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And she says, tell him to come for Christmas. And Bill says, are you sure you don't mind? And she says, what's one more? What's one more? Or something like that, mm-hmm. right? And I don't think I noticed that the first time I read it, but having read it once and knowing what's coming at the end, that made me think. Mm. That question, how is Eileen going to, and I feel like it's setting her up to go back on her word, right? In the aftermath of the book, that we don't get to see her reaction, or that she's foreshadowing or predicting, right? That there will be one more person at the table. It's not Ned, right? But there will be another person, and that's okay. I don't know. I have hope in Eileen.
See, there you go.
So that's nice, because as you're saying that, I was like, Eileen can go kick rocks. I did not have a good impression of Eileen, but I do remember when she said that, it made me think, maybe there's hope, But, okay, so when Laura recommended the book and she called it the perfect book, I was like, well, I'll say about that. So that might have...
you rolled your eyes.
Yeah, that might have prejudiced me a little bit, set the expectations like unusually high. I will say that I love a good novella. I think that probably of all the forms, right, for prose, novellas might be one of the hardest because you're always toying with what is a short story, what is a novel, or what is a novella, when does it cross that line? But also to write something this short but so impactful is really, to me, like an exercise in restraint. Mm-hmm. And that's so hard. And I feel like that's when someone has mastered their craft, whatever their craft is, culinary, literary, other arts, is when they are showing like restraint, both in the word order, right? The word choices, the prose. I think Claire Keegan in an interview called it athletic prose. She really likes athletic prose. So every line has got to deliver. Right? Mm-hmm. So every piece of dialogue is intentional because there's not a lot of real estate that you're giving over to it. And what you're able to accomplish and the choices of what you make to leave out are really important. And so I wasn't surprised when it ended the way it did, because it ends, but there's no real closure. It's ending on another sort of opening. It could be another chapter almost. But she chooses to end it there. And I think that was really smart. I think there's another novella that I read. It's a Chinese novella called Lust, Caution. And that one, the writer does a masterful job in showing that kind of restrained prose, but also restrained choices in the narration, the narrative details. And yet, I found that the novel was so chock full of the kind of like detail that goes into creating something. I'm trying not to laugh because Laura's having another coughing fit.
Oh my God, what's wrong with me?
As she predicted she would have.
I also think it's whenever Sylvia's talking.
I know, you're allergic to my genius. It's all right. It's okay, Laura.
It's a reaction.
Yeah, you know.
Not everybody can handle it.
No, the truth. Can't handle the
It's
truth.
a lot.
But no, I thought the level of detail was so good for such a small novel. So in an interview, I looked up this interview that she had about small things like these, and it won a bunch of prizes, including one prize that was considered the most lucrative for short story. They considered it a short story, but then it also won a bunch of prizes for best novel. And one of the judges said that the book left them with the question, so what are you going to do now with what you believe in? And I thought that was such a good way to think about the book, because that's really what Furlong is wrestling with throughout the whole book, because his life has been one that has been shaped by people's choices, and it could have gone very differently for him. And he's been the recipient of that, and he believes in the power of that. So what is he going to do now? And you see him kind of wrestle with that, as well as wrestling with like midlife crisis in general, it sounds like.
Yeah,
but like,
yeah.
you know, I thought it was such a really interesting way to frame the book. And I think maybe pointing to the hope that you're talking about, because you can't help as a reader but ask yourself, okay, if that were me, right, and I had a family and times are tough, you know, and to add to your synopsis, this convent like runs the town basically. Like the town is entirely dependent for its like financial and other kind of well-being, social well-being on the convent. And you're going to potentially piss off a lot of important people at this convent, and you're asking for a world of hurt. And knowing what the consequences are going to be, what are you going to do now that you know what you believe in, but also now that you know what the cost is going to be for that? And I found it, like reading it now was very apropos with the times that we're in, right? The things that, you know, standing up for something is costing quite literally some institutions and some people. And so I thought that was, for me, the what I really enjoyed the book. But I call it the perfect book. I don't know about that. But I thought it was so masterfully structured.
It is. I thought, and again, reading it again, I picked up on so much more, because it's such a short book that I had missed, or maybe sort of just didn't look at carefully before. But even the first time I read, and this sort of is the thesis, right? Thesis question on page 113, when he's thinking, was it possible to carry on along through all the years, the decades, through an entire life without once being brave enough? And for me, that word brave there is really important. Brave enough to go against what was there and yet call yourself a Christian and face yourself in the mirror. And I think it doesn't have to be limited to the word Christian. I think whatever it is that you value, right, that you measure yourself against, and you could replace that word Christian with something else. And then this idea of brave also reminded me of earlier, where he talks about when he's looking at this girl and he says, he says that she was such a small shut down thing. And once more, the ordinary part of him simply wanted to be rid of this and go on home, right? And so there was these multiple moments when he has to make a choice. And it really was like a reminder about like those moments in our own lives about every day it's a small thing, right? Like you pick up your kids, you go to work, you get the groceries, and these are the small things. But occasionally there is a moment when you can make a choice to demonstrate that courage or bravery. And through that, there's a lot of door references throughout the book. First time I noticed it was when he goes to the yard. The gate is locked and the lock is frozen shut, so he can't open it. So he goes across to the neighbor's house to get the hot water kettle to open it. And then he goes to the convent later, and there is the locked door. And he says at some point something about how so much of his life is waiting on the other side, on one side of the door, waiting for the door to open. And at the very end, when he makes his decision, he says, you know, I don't know. He doesn't know what's on the other side of the door as he's looking at his door to his house, right? At the end. So I I thought that was such a good, what's the word, like a, what do you
Yeah.
call that?
Extended metaphor.
Yes, like that carries through the whole book, and it pops up sort of physically, but also symbolically in his thinking about that. So again, that door also goes with the idea of choice, making choices, you know, when we open the door, new situation, being on the other side.
Yeah, you know, and I think the symbolism and sort of the religious symbolism is causing that choice to become more apparent. You know, I think that you have to think that in any other time when he was delivering logs and coal, he was aware of the stories about the laundry and who was doing it. But I think having one of his kids being a little bit reticent about going to see Santa and feeling a sort of nostalgia about his own upbringing and how his mom found herself in the house of Miss Wilson.
Wilson,
Not Miss Willis. That he felt the graciousness, but there's also an undercurrent of something else there with his relationship to Ned, with his relationship to Mrs. Wilson, that doesn't actually get resolved, but you do wonder if that is also the impetus of his choice, that someone took his mom in when no one else would. Someone showed kindness to him when they didn't have to. And he was showing kindness to the people that he was serving because a lot of them owed him, except the convent. They were the ones who actually paid their bills. And the fact that everyone else was, as they said, on the slate, you know, that was telling that there's a certain graciousness to him in the face of the fact that even though he got his wife some shoes for, you know, the holidays and everything, and he made that kind of promise, and he understood that when the kids were putting together their Christmas list, there were certain things they can do and can't do. There was always this bit of hope and graciousness that, again, I really found the book in a way delightful. And maybe joyful wouldn't be the word I would use, but I'm like, oh,
that's nice.
There's goodness on earth. And, you know, and that goodness does bring about a hope. It does bring about a way of feeling that even in these times when things are going the way they're going politically and socially, that there is still a measure of hope that is out there, that we can all, you know, look at those small things and see how they all connect and add up to something meaningful. And I just found I didn't dislike the book. You know? I don't want you to get the impression because I didn't think
it was perfect.
Because I didn't think it was perfect, that I think it's like trash. You know, I didn't think that. But I think that it was a very different book than the ones I've read before, even the ones I mentioned last pod. And I kind of enjoy that.
Yeah,
so, you know, thanks, Laura.
So I do think, like, so when we say perfect, when I say perfect, not we, because we don't say that. I really do think I look at this book and I think, and again, thinking, there is nothing else I would ask for from this book, right? Like what it sets out to do, it does it. And it does it and in a way that I can't, there is nothing in here that makes me think, oh, I wish it had this or it didn't have that. And I think in that sense, I think maybe it's very satisfactory. So like I closed the book and I felt not only good and hopeful, but like,
satisfied.
It was like, chef's kiss in that way.
No, I agree with that. I had no notes. I had no notes. And I think, if that's what you mean by it, like, I thought you meant like perfect book.
Oh,
like,
no.
Overall.
Yeah. I don't know if that such a thing exists.
That's what I'm saying. Like, does the perfect exist? But the technically, like, the technical craft of the story itself is, you can't go any further with it. you can't put this in a writing workshop and people will have more improvement. I think it's just as it is. She took it as far as she could go, technically perfect, right? For this particular story. But I did find, I think kind of along what you were saying, Kofi, I found the book to be somewhat comforting in that sense. Even though it talks about something pretty effed up, I was like, actually, this could be an effed up book too. The idea of how humans can, degrade other humans. And when you really think of the scale and the magnitude of what this particular small incident represents in the history of these Magdalene laundries, that's pretty horrifying. But I think in terms of the way that she set this book up, the time, even the choice of it, the time period of it, I found there to be something somewhat comforting about that because it is small things. It's just the small, everyday, mundane things about going about living your life that is never taken for granted in the book, in the sense that, Furlong came from nothing and has no safety net and built a life, for his family and is doing fairly well comparatively. Yeah, they have to make choices, but he's got everything set up where he can provide for his family. And a lot of us are in that stage of life, the messy middle, where we're taking care of our children. We are, what's important to us is setting a strong foundation and keeping that family unit together. And then something can come along to just sort of disrupt those little small things that really matter. It's the everyday small things. But at the same time, to your point, it is within those small everyday interactions in which we can have that impact and make these choices that will call us out to be a little bit brave and out of comfort, So you step away. She sets up the comfort, and then she challenges even me to step out of that comfort. What are you willing to sacrifice and risk? And there's this one scene where he's coming back from the convent the first time, where he makes this discovery, and he gets lost down this road, and there's a person there, and he asks will this road lead me to the main street or something? And the gentleman says, this road will take you anywhere you want to go. And then that sticks in his mind, and he thinks about that later on, as sort of you're at the choices that are laid out before you versus people who don't have that kind of luxury. Yeah. But I did find the book very comforting in that sense. And then, I like where she ended the book as well. Yeah. Right.
And for such a short book with seemingly very focus on this one character and his family and his life choice, it actually also is bringing a lot of what you might call social and political issues it's all there. Even the fact that Miss Wilson or Mrs. Wilson is Protestant, right? That means something. And then you contrast that to what's happening at the convent and the way the women and girls are treated in that context. And there's one scene where he's talking with, I forget which one, maybe he was talking with the Mother Superior or someone about his girls. And how there's no boy to take his name. And he says, what do I have against girls? Yeah. Right? And he says, my mother was once a girl, right? And basically says, y'all are girls, right? And I thought that was such a statement. And I know he's just talking about his daughters, right? Thinking about other people thinking, oh, poor you don't have any sons. But given the topic of the book, right? And the political sort of themes going on there, I just thought that stood out, and I just love this guy even more. Yeah. And so there are a lot of these moments where you think it's going to become about this big thing, but then it's not about the big thing. It's just about his life and his girls and his wife and his own, maybe hang-ups about his own not knowing who his father was and his mother and so on. So I appreciated that those big questions are there and part of life, as it is in all of our lives, but that it didn't take over the story. Right?
She doesn't smack you over the head with it, in such an obvious way, but she brings it out in the small things like these, and that's really what teases it out. Even some of the details were funny to me, like how, that one night before Christmas, he's just walking down the street and doing his Christmas shopping and stops in and buys a 7-Up
Yeah.
at the chip shop. And
Yep.
like he can smell the grease from the chip shop. It's just really, I just think even down to the minute details, it
Yeah.
really grounds you in those kinds of comforting moments of, you
Yeah.
know, walking quietly,
Yeah.
doing your thing. And then there's this looming decision that road eventually
Yeah.
leads him down. So yeah, that was so well done. Thanks, Laura. 10 out of 10. No notes. We'll read again. All hits, no skips.
The other detail that I thought when he was shopping, and then like later he goes back to the shops to pick up the shoes that he had ordered for his wife, right?
Yeah.
Patent leather shoes.
Size
6. See the detail.
See?
The detail.
And at the end, it's like one of the very last scene, like a thing that we can see in the narrative is Sarah's bare feet.
Yes.
And his holding the new
Pair
patent
of
leather
shoes.
shoes in his other hand. And I just thought, oh, I guess Eileen's not going to get her shoes. But that symbolically also was very meaningful to me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kofi's.
Yeah, I'm pondering. I was thinking about something that you said, Sylvia, about disruption. He actually disrupts Sarah's life, right? But in a way that you would want that disruption.
Yeah. Well, she asks for the disruption.
Well, one asked to be taken to the river. One of the girls wanted to be taken to the river to drown, and then he discovers this one in the coal shed. And so, you know, it's this. Even when he was with Mother Superior, he didn't leave when they wanted him to leave.
Yes.
He just wanted to take his whole sweet time.
Yeah. And so there was these small acts of bravery, I guess you would say, or these small acts of defiance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even going to visit Ned and seeing the house all decorated differently than what it once was. I mean, there were all these, I think the moments leading up to the moment.
Yes.
That's right.
That's
It
exactly
stacks.
right.
They stack.
That's exactly
Yes.
right. Yeah.
That's great.
But one thing to keep in mind, he also had something to drink.
And he usually doesn't.
And and so
he had a little whiskey in his coffee.
What are they called?
Sherry, trifle.
Courage?
Liquid courage.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is
It'll
what
make
they
you
do.
do a lot.
Let's end there.
Yeah.
On liquid courage.
Nothing like it.
Well, that is our show for today. We highly recommend if those of you are looking for summer reading. We didn't do our usual summer reading wrap up in May, but if you're looking for a short little book to kick off your reading, we recommend Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. And, you know, curious to know what you thought of it. So please catch us wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on Facebook and drop a comment if you read it. And we'd love to hear from you.
See you next time.
See you next time.
See you next time.